welcome everybody to our virtual wine tasting tour of Italy for Thanksgiving dinner. I'd like to introduce Tony Polzer, who's going to be presenting tonight. Tony Polzer is the founder of Italy for Wine Lovers and works as an Italian wine consultant, educator, judge, and tour guide. Tony has been a wine instructor and consultant for the U.S. Embassy in Rome since 2014. In addition, he also worked as a wine consultant for the Italian Embassy in Stockholm, Sweden from 2015 to 2017. He has consulted and/or judged for Italy's Price Pleasure Wines, Forbes, Wine Folly, and more. Currently, there are roughly 200 Italian wine ambassadors spread out across the globe. Not only has Tony accomplished this difficult certification and honor, but he was one of the very first 5 wine experts to do so. Without any further ado, Tony, take it away.
Hi all, how are you? How's everyone going? How's everyone doing? Okay, so I know this is a little bit of a unique way to do a wine tasting, and but with all things COVID, we got to make the best as we can and still enjoy life and still have some fun and drink lots of wine. And so let's get right on into it. As you all know, this tasting is all about what wines you should be using, or I should say you should be buying for Thanksgiving coming up on Thursday. So while we have 4 wines to drink tonight, there are plenty more that you can, of course, buy for Thanksgiving. And I'll get into a bunch of those different grapes and styles, but I'll be focusing on the ones that you have in front of you. Speaking of which, you might not have all of them in front of you because you might have some of them in the fridge. If you can right now, take out the first one, the Rotary Brut Rosé. It should look like this. Take that out. That's what we'll be starting with. And the other 2 white wines, you can probably pull them out now as well from the refrigerator. We'll be getting into those in about 15, 20 minutes. Give some time to warm up just a little bit because your refrigerator temperature will be a little too cold for those white wines. So you want to let them warm up just slightly. So I pull them out. I wouldn't bother pouring them just yet, but at least get them out. And I'll let you know when we're moving on to those wines, so when you can open the bottles and start pouring. Now, a tasting like this is actually very needed because Thanksgiving is not a typical meal. In no way, shape, or form do you ever eat like you eat on Thanksgiving any other day of the year. It's just so unique between that herb-filled stuffing, the cranberry sauce, or even a spiced cranberry sauce, or the ham, the turkey, the gravy, the mashed potatoes, the yams, the sweet potatoes with marshmallows, the pecan pie, the spiced pumpkin pie, etc., etc., etc. A lot of very unique flavors, a lot of very unique aspects to a typical Thanksgiving meal. And it does make pairing wine a little more difficult than your typical, maybe Friday night meal or of a steak or of a casserole or burgers or whatever you're preparing that evening. So it is a little bit different. So it is definitely necessary to get into it and think a little bit more about what that meal consists of, break down the different elements, what wines would go well with those different elements, etc. Now, tonight, the concept of this tasting was to showcase a sparkling wine, a white wine, a red wine, and a dessert wine. Unfortunately, there was a mistake on the end of the distributor who delivered all the wines to the yacht club this week. And they did not give us the dessert wine. They gave us a extra white wine instead. And the wines were almost identical. It's just literally, if you look at your little sheet, where did my sheet go? Here it is. You look at your little sheet, that last one in that sheet, the Rio Favara Mizzica Moscato di Noto. It was supposed to be exactly that, except Rio Favara Notissimo Moscato di Noto. So 1 word difference, distributor mixed up the 2 words, and one's a dry white wine and the other one's a dessert wine. So we're going to have to kind of roll what we have and drink two different whites tonight and not have the dessert wine as was planned. And I'll get a little bit into talking about the dessert wines, but just to know that we're going to have to call an audible right now and work with what we have. So before we get started drinking the first wine, I want to get into a little bit about grapes that you should be thinking about for your Thanksgiving meal. Because like I said, you don't have to use just these ones that we're drinking tonight. There are plenty other great ones out there. I think most people, when they're going to, go to hit Bay Ridge or Eastport Liquors or whatever your go-to wine shop in town, you're probably going to grab a Chardonnay and or a Cabernet. That's what most people are going to do. And they're two of the absolute worst wines to grab for Thanksgiving. Your typical Chardonnay, especially your American Chardonnay, it's just too oaky, it's too buttery, it's too intense. Instead, you want to go with grapes like Riesling, Gewürztraminer, which is what we're drinking tonight, Viognier, Sauvignon Blanc, Chenin Blanc, Pinot Grigio would be another one. Pinot Grigio, you got to be careful with, because there is a whole lot of Pinot Grigio throughout Italy. Now, the problem is a lot of the stuff that we get here is the mass-produced, made only for the American market. You're not even going to find it sold in Italy. So definitely look for something on the, like a smaller producer. Ask the store clerk there, hey, what's more of a little bit smaller producer there in Italy. Stay away from that mass produce. It really is just swill. And then of course, another grape would be Albarino. Now, right now I'm adding all these into the chat for you, so that way everyone has them. So I'm adding each grape individually. And these are all of my recommendations for white grapes or white wines for Thanksgiving. And I got one or two more to type in and it's all yours. Okay, hold on there. Albarino. Okay, so those are the white grapes that I really like to have for my Thanksgiving meals. Now, as far as red, like I said, a lot of people like to go with their Cabernet. Well, once again, you want to stay away from it. It's just too tart and it's too high in tannins. For those of you who are not very familiar with wines, the tannins you're going to find primarily in a red wine. This is the dryness you get in your mouth. Like if you have cotton in your mouth, that's that big dryness. And you really don't want that for your Thanksgiving meal. Instead, try some lighter reds. Go with Pinot Nero, is what we call it in Italy, at least. Everyone else knows it as Pinot Noir, the French term, of course. I prefer the Pinot Noir, the Italian term, but hey, that's me. Also look for Primitivo, which is what we are drinking tonight. Now, most of you have drinking Primitivo, but you just don't know it because you call it by something else. See, here in the States, Primitivo is known as Zinfandel. And so Zinfandel is the California version of the grape, which originally came from Italy, in the heel of the boot of Italy. And there it's called Primitivo. And Primitivo, because the first part of that word, primo, first, it's one of the first grapes to be harvested in the area. It harvests as early as mid-August. So it's one of the first harvests, hence Primitivo. But it's not actually even native to Italy. I mean, it's been in Italy for probably 1,000, 2,000 years, but it actually probably came from Croatia. And in Croatia, I mean, one of the terms it's called, you'll never remember this. I'm not even going to try typing it in. It's something along the lines of Krylinac Kastelinski or something like that. More commonly known in Croatia as Tribidrag. So that's where it comes from originally. Tribidrag, Croatia. It goes to emigrates over to Italy, where it becomes Primitivo. it emigrates across the pond to the United States, where it becomes Zinfandel. So in addition to that, definitely get some Syrah. Syrah is another good one. And another good one is a denomination in France known as Beaujolais. Now, I know Beaujolais Nouveau just came out just recently. Stay away from the Beaujolais Nouveau, but get regular Beaujolais. And your regular Beaujolais are primarily the grape Gamay, and I'll type that in here as well. And there also are some Pinot Noir in the Beaujolais denomination in France. So those are the grapes. They're all there in your chat. That's what I'd recommend going with if you want some extra options for Thursday. Now, our first wine of the evening is the Rotary Brut Rosé. So let's open that up and let's get that into our glasses. And if you don't already have it in your glass, I think some of you or most of you probably already do. Now, I do like to, every time I do a wine class for a new group of people, I always do like to talk about the importance of safety when it comes to a sparkling wine. And most people think it might be overrated, but safety is important with these guys because this is all under pressure, this bottle, and these corks can just fly out, cause, hit someone in the eye. A few years ago, one of the ministers of Italy, so like a cabinet member of Italy, was opening up a bottle of sparkling, and the cork went flying right through a Renaissance painting, causing tens of thousands of euros in damage. So it definitely is dangerous. Now, the best way to also open a sparkling wine is you hold that cork with one hand, the bottom of the bottle with the other, and you slightly twist the bottle, and you actually put pressure back down on the cork so it just barely comes out. So listen closely. That's all you want from your sparkling wine when you open it up. Just a little bit of a hiss. Nothing more than that. You don't want that big, big, big pop, the explosion of foam and everything else, because all that does is it's losing the carbonation out of the wine. You're losing the fizz out of the wine. So you definitely don't want to go that route. Just a nice little soft fizz. So this first wine, the producer is called Rotary, R-O-T-A-R-I, and this is their Brut Rosé. The denomination is Trento DOC. So Trento DOC is a geographically defined area in northern Italy. It's located north of Lake Garda. It's south of Bolzano. It's all the way up in the north of Italy in the Trentino Alto Adige area. There's a lot of German spoken up there as well as Italian. You're just so far north that this was a German territory prior to, or I should say Austrian territory, prior to World War I. So a lot of German heritage up that way, and you're on the foothills of the Dolomites. The Dolomites being a section of the Italian Alps. So you got some very high altitudes up there. In fact, these grapes are all grown at about 400 to 550 meters above sea level. So very, very high altitudes. And the grapes that we're looking at here within this wine, this is Chardonnay and Pinot Noir or Pinot Nero. Now, I know a moment ago I said don't go with Chardonnay, but in that case, I was talking about a still white wine. Chardonnay, a still white wine versus a sparkling wine as such. Now, I don't recommend you going with just any old sparkling wine either. You want to stay away from anything like Prosecco or anything made in a similar style to Prosecco. So Prosecco is made in a method called Chamat. And this is where they do a second fermentation of the wine in these massive steel vats. And while it's a great process and it makes for an inexpensive sparkling wine and a very fantastic wine, it's a very light, crisp, fresh wine. It's better for a a summer aperitif, out during the middle of the summer, paired with some potato chips or some salted peanuts or a fruit cocktail or strawberries or things like that for a Thanksgiving meal. It just will not have the power to stand up with any of the dishes of a Thanksgiving meal. So you want to go with a classic method sparkling wine. So your most common style classic method sparkling wine, and you all know it, is champagne. So from France, we have champagne. It's the most famous classic method sparkling wine in the world. And then in Italy, we have two major denominations of classic method sparkling wine, one of them being Trento DOC, which is what we're drinking right now. And I'll put that in the chat for you there so you understand. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Did you guys all? Yeah, okay, you did all get that. I want to make sure I got it into the chat for everyone there. And it looks like y'all got the grapes in the chat, right? It looks like you did. Okay. Hold on a second, just got a question coming in here. Okay, so I'll get back to that question in a second, Liz, sorry. Where was I? Oh yeah, the two major denominations of classic method sparkling in Italy would be Trento DOC, which I'm putting into the chat now. And the other one is called Franciacorta. Those are your two major ones. Franciacorta being the largest, the biggest one there is. You're going to find the most types of Franciacorta in the area here. Trento DOC will be a little bit harder to find. I at least know that like the Italian market over on Defense Highway usually has 3 or 4 different Franciacortas and maybe 1 or 2 Trento DOCs. They probably have the best selection of Italian wines in this entire region. Actually, the best selection of Italian wines I've seen in the entire East Coast of the U.S. So yeah, definitely look out for Franciacorta, look out for Trento DOC, look out for champagne as well. I want to digress for a quick second, answer a question somebody asked me about the shape of the glass. I think you're probably asking that because I put it into a normal wine glass versus a champagne flute is why I'm probably getting asked that question. A champagne flute is for show. Simple as that. It does nothing for the wine at all. It just makes it look pretty. All those bubbles coming up and that nice elongated little flute-like thing. It's just maybe if you got like some celebration or a wedding or New Year's or something like that, break out the champagne flutes. But outside of that, I will never use a champagne flute. I always just use a very typical style wine glass, for whether it be a white, a red, or a champagne. And that's because you want to be able to have the bouquet open up in the glass. You want to be able to smell that, and you want to be able to twirl that wine. And you just cannot do that with a champagne flute. So anyways, as I was saying, here is 2 different grapes in here. We have the Pinot Noir or Pinot Nero in Italy and the Chardonnay. As far as the percentage breakdown we're looking at in their version of it, it's 75% Pinot Nero and 25% Chardonnay. Now, feel free to stick your nose in there and don't be shy. Put your schnauzer right on in to see what you're coming up with scent-wise. And I always recommend take a whiff first. And then also swirl the glass. And this will open it up, bring out those olfactory compounds. You can, the smell will definitely change here. And if you can't do what I'm doing, you can always just set it down on the table and go like this instead. And if anybody's getting any interesting notes, please feel free to add it to the chat. And I'm definitely looking at you, Marguerite, because you're my class teacher's pet here. You've done this how many times with me before? So I hope you're going to come up with some good bouquets here. Okay. So I'm getting a little bit of, I'm getting some berries here.
Raspberry?
I'm definitely getting raspberry. Maybe a little blackberry as well, or maybe even some cranberry. But raspberry is my #1 berry I'm getting. there's a very
Yeah, that's the number one taste.
that?
That's the number one taste I got.
The raspberry.
Yeah. And I love raspberries, so maybe that's why.
There you go. I mean, I'm getting a very touch of yeast, almost like a freshly baked bread, but just ever so slightly. Might be a little bit of rose in here. Maybe some hazelnut. Maybe a touch of pineapple. Now, these are things that I'm getting, and you don't have to be getting these exact same things. It's all about your experience in life and what this is reminding you of. None of these things actually exist in this glass. It's just that some of the core chemical compounds of this wine are very similar to the chemical compounds of some of these other elements out there. And that's why it's giving us a representation or making us feel like we're smelling these items with inside the glass. Okay. Laura, can I have a spittoon down below? Sorry, just asking my wife to get me something for my tasting that I forgot to pull out. Give me 1 second, folks. Thank you. Okay, now let's give it a try. On the mouth, we have a beautiful acidity. You're getting a puckering sensation there in your mouth. That's the acidity. And that's, you really want that acidity in here. It's very, very important characteristic of a classic method sparkling wine. And it's going to allow that to also be paired very well across the meal. In general, your classic method sparkling wines, you can pair with almost anything. So when you hear people talk about different wines and say, oh, well, what would you recommend I eat with this wine? Or how would you recommend pairing with this? Sometimes it can be a little more difficult depending on the wine. Or for example, if you got if you're going to a fancy restaurant, no one's going to a fancy restaurant these days, but if you're going to a fancy restaurant and you're having like a 7-course meal or something like that, and you want to have a nice wine that's going to go with all those different courses, instead of having a different wine for every course, just get a classic method sparkling wine, because they really go from appetizer to dessert and anything in between. So whether it be a normal or a rosé, you really can't go wrong with that classic method. Hold on a second. Yeah, see, that's perfect. That really is. It's a beautiful wine. We have it. To me, it's the the juxtaposition of the richness of the flavor and the delicate texture from the acidity and the fine bubbles. It really just makes this absolutely perfect for any dish. It will definitely stand up for the entire Thanksgiving meal. Especially the turkey and gravy. This will be absolutely beautiful with. What do y'all think of that one? Do you like that wine? Thumbs up for most of you, I think. Good, okay. So let's move on to our second wine. Oops. Laura, can I have the second one, please? My wife's also my assistant in helping me pour the wines. So our second wine, let's go with the, we're going to do the Rio Favara Mizzica. Looks like this. Like I said, this was supposed to be the sweet wine, and bottle looks the same, label looks the same, just a one-word difference right here, and the distributor messed up, and we got a dry white wine and not a dessert wine. So just bear with, and we'll try to get through this one. So Rio Favre is a winery located in Sicily. They're located in the Noto Valley. That's N-O-T-O, the Noto Valley in southeastern Sicily. Very, 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 very small producer. They only have about 13 hectares, which is tiny. So once again, this is a wine you'll probably never come across this producer again, just because of how small they are and how few bottles come into the United States. They've been around for about 100 years. So I think they were founded around 1920 or so. Now here on the nose, I don't know what you all are getting, but for me, there's a sweetness on the nose, like a fruity sweetness, maybe like a peach sweetness, like a very ripe peach. Maybe some citrus zest. I'm also getting a very hint of very light green tea, maybe. Maybe some light mint. Maybe some grapefruit.
Yeah, that's right.
It's got a pretty decent body to it. It almost, you can almost taste it's almost like an oiliness in the mouth here, and some good acidity as well. This is aged only in steel. There's no wood here. Sweetness is a key factor when it comes to Thanksgiving. The reason why is you got a lot of salty dishes during Thanksgiving. And you also have a lot of sweet dishes at Thanksgiving between all the desserts, or like I said, the candied yams and the sweet potato, marshmallow, all that stuff. So you want the sweet against sweet. Also, you want the sweet against salty. So this will go well for a lot of the different dishes of Thanksgiving. Once again, just that sweetness factor, the fact that it has the good acidity. Now, someone asked me a question about the vintage, but not in relation to this wine, in relation to the last wine. So let me just backtrack a second. The specific question was, is vintage a factor with sparkling wine? And in reality, majority of sparkling wines out there are non-vintage, or sometimes abbreviated NV, non-vintage. And that's because they will actually mix together the juice, the wine from different vintages together when they produce their bottles. However, what we drink tonight is a vintage. It does have a 2014 statement right there on the bottle. So it does have a vintage. So that's not as, so I'd say the vintage just doesn't play a very huge factor in sparkling wines, just because most of them are non-vintage. But what does play a major factor in it is knowing when it was disgorged. And what I mean by that is, I'm going to take a normal wine bottle just because I don't have a closed bottle of sparkling wine in front of me, and I'm about to turn it upside down, and that would not be good because my bottle's open. But if this was a bottle of sparkling wine, what's happening in the classic method is the second fermentation is happening in the bottle. And a byproduct of fermentation, fermentation is the concept of yeast eating sugars to produce alcohol. A byproduct would be sediment. And since that's happening inside the bottle, all that sediment builds up inside of the bottle. So you have to get rid of it. So what they do is a process called disgorgement. And the way that happens is they take the bottle and they put them in these A-frame racks, and they're held like this. And for about a 10-day period, they'll take it and do a little quarter turn. And every day, they also raise it a little bit, quarter turn, until eventually After about 7 or 10 days, the bottle's like this in the rack. And what's happening is it's kind of think of it like a cement truck. You know, you're turning it so the sediment's not sticking to one side. You're getting it down, so all the sediment's coming down into the neck of the bottle. And then you're putting it into an ice bath. You're freezing this portion of the bottle, and then you're popping it up and open at the same time. And that has now like an ice cube here that contains all that sediment, which pops straight on out. And that's called the disgorgement process. And then you fill it back up with a little more sparkling wine from the other bottles, so that you don't have too much air in the bottle, because air is the biggest culprit of, oxidizing a wine and making a wine fault. But that process of disgorgement is where you're taking the sediment out. And that's what's important when it comes to the age of sparkling wine, is because a sparkling wine really truly only ages when it's sitting on those lees, when it's sitting on that sediment. And so on your bottles, you'll actually see on the very back of it, let's see if I got this, there we go, Sbocatura 2019. So this is the 2014 vintage. There we go, 2014 vintage. That is the year when it was harvested. And in 2019 is when the process of disgorgement happened, where they got the lees, they took that sediment out of the bottle. And that's the period where this wine was aging, from 2014 to 2019. After that, yes, this bottle can tilt once the cork's back in there and you have it in your own cellar or your own, wine refrigerator. It could still age, but barely. The true aging of a sparkling wine happens when it's still there, sitting on its sediment on those lees. So that's what you really want to look for, is how long it's been on its lees for. That's what's important. Now we're going to go get back off of that. I know we backtracked there a little bit. And someone asked if there is a mushroom or mushroomy note. So I'm getting a slight one. It's not very earthy. I don't get a very earthy, underbrushy, kind of dank, that celery type mushroomy note to it. But it's very, very light, like freshly cut button mushrooms or something maybe. But not very, very, very strong. Like I said, what I'm getting might be slightly different than what you're getting. Sometimes there are certain notes that everyone should be getting, but the mushroom one here, some of you might get it, some of you might not. It really all depends. Now, let's move on to our third wine of the evening. And, oh, by the way, I forgot, before we move on to our third grape, it looks like I forgot to mention the grape here on that last wine. And that would be white Muscat, okay? Or in Italian, Moscato Bianco. And Moscato Bianco, most of you might be more familiar with it from northern Italy. You might be familiar with Moscato d'Asti, which is a very light alcoholic, a very fizzy, not sparkling per se, but fizzy, dessert-ish wine, usually around 6 to 8%. Not for everyone. Some people absolutely love them. A lot of people don't. So it really all depends. This is an entirely different ball game. It is nothing like a Moscato d'Asti from northern Italy. So it's a very, very, very different wine. Our third wine is this one right here. It is the Hofstadter Joseph, and the grape is Gewürztraminer. And Gewürztraminer is one of the grapes that I added onto the list for you a little bit earlier. Gewürztraminer is an aromatic grape, so we should have a lot of beautiful aromatics here in this wine. And if anybody's getting anything, please let me know. So I'm definitely getting a fruity note. For me, it's lychee. I'm also getting some dried flowers or maybe some rose petals. There's a bit of a spice note here. How about white pepper? Definitely getting some white pepper here.
It's good.
Is it?
I get the white pepper, Tony.
You're getting white pepper, Marguerite?
Yeah. I like it because I like spice. So
There you go. There's definitely another spice on here too besides white pepper. I'm just not getting it at the moment. Can't pull it out. But the white pepper is the most prominent spice I'm getting.
yeah, but it get a little bit of a bite. I like that.
So once again, we're getting a little bit of a sweetness here. Not as much as we did in the last one, but a little bit of sweetness here. So once again, that sweetness will go well with anything salty, go well with sweet potatoes, but it'll also go well with your salty items like your turkey or your spice and herb-laden stuffing. It'll go perfect with those dishes.
I just said popcorn.
I don't usually have popcorn at Thanksgiving, but maybe tonight we can put some popcorn with this. So the Hofstadter winery, where this wine is produced, this is located up in Trentino Alto Adige, so northern Italy, not too far from the Austrian border. This would be about 30 minutes south of Bolzano, about 30 minutes north of Trento. Trento being where our first wine was from, the sparkling wine. It's located in the town of Tramin. So that's Tramin, Tramin, or Trameno in Italian, Tramin in its local dialect. The winery itself, I think, was established in early 1900s, like something like 1905, 1910, somewhere around there. It's a little over 100 years old. But while the winery is on the newer side, and by the way, 100 years old, 120-year-old winery is new in Italy. I sometimes take clients to a winery in Tuscany that's been around for 1,000 years. So a winery that's 100 years old versus a winery that's 1,000 years old. Yeah, 100-year-old winery is brand spanking new when it comes to things in Italy. But the grape itself, Gewürztraminer, and the grape growing tradition of the area of Tramin where this is grown has been around for a very, very long time. In fact, the first record that they can find, still existing written record of Gewürztraminer being grown in Italy is grown in the town of Tramin back in 1145. Okay, so this is a grape that's been around for at least 850 plus years, almost 900 years at minimum. Who knows how long this grape's actually been growing for, but that's all we have as far as the written record is concerned. Very hilly, mountainous area. Once again, we are on the foothills of the Dolomites. We're right against the southern Alps, Italian Alps there. They grow their grapes anywhere from 250 to 850 meters above sea level. So once again, very, very high altitude. This is all aged in steel. There is no oak on this at all. And I'll get more into that a little bit later on in the tasting. Steel versus oak as we move along. And my wife is just pointing out that to her, she's getting the rose that I mentioned earlier, that she's definitely getting a floral note to this, specifically a rose note. So there's definitely, yeah, without a doubt, that floral note here, a bit of a rose on this. It's also, yeah, it's definitely on the lighter side for Gewürztraminer, but I would say it is, as far as the bouquet, as far as the flavor on the palate, this is the typical Gewürztraminer. It really truly is. This is be a benchmark for Gewürztraminer. So the question is the German version sweeter? The Gewürztraminer, great whether you're talking about from Alto Adige or from Germany. It's going to have pretty much about the same amount of sugar content actually in the grapes. It's just a matter of style production. And you will have some German ones that might have a slightly sweeter note to it, or sweeter production to it than your Italian ones. But it has nothing to do with the grape itself. It is everything to do with the production style of that region. And someone says they're also possibly getting some clover in here. Let me just double check that.
It's kind of a leafy.
So clover or clove?
Clover.
Clover.
It's almost a green.
I can smell the freshness. I think I'm getting what you're mentioning as clover. I don't want to go, I don't want to say it's a green, too much of a green note. It's more of a fresh note. For me, at least.
And for me, it's clover.
Yeah, I see. I'm getting a fresh note. I don't want to go quite saying it's a green note. It's not like a like green stems or green like that. But it's very light. It's very fresh. It's a great wine, especially at the price point. You really can't beat it. I'm not going to get into prices just yet, though. Okay. So let's move along to our fourth wine. Our fourth wine is from a producer called Castello Monacchi. And they're located in the heel of the boot. They're so all the way down in southeastern Italy. It's called Puglia, Pulgia. I'll type that here in so everyone's got it. Puglia. Like I said, it's the heel of the boot. Their main building of the grounds is a 16th century castle. So hence why they use the term Castello Monacchi. Castello means castle in Italian. They actually named this wine Piluna, Piluna, and you see it right there on the bottle. And that is a local dialect term meaning pot of clay. And the reason for that is that back in the day, in ancient times, all of your wine was either aged in clay amphora or made in clay amphora or shipped in clay amphora. And in fact, if you ever go to visit Rome, in Rome, we have a hillside in southern Rome called Testaccio. And that little neighborhood of Testaccio, very working class neighborhood, very gritty, great restaurants. But anyways, that hillside in Testaccio is completely man-made. And why it's man-made, and it's not like hey, let's make this hill. It was a garbage dump, but a garbage dump of all the broken clay amphora from all the shipping of wine. And so whenever they this terracotta amphora would break, they'd throw into this massive pile, and that pile just kept growing and growing, and it's now a hill. That's how massive it is. So that's how they used to, like I said, used to make aged wine in ancient times. It was in clay amphora. You can still find people using clay amphora today. It's not very common. There's a handful of wineries throughout Italy that use it. The country that uses the most clay amphora would be Georgia. They're huge on clay amphora wines, and especially with their white wines. And so their white wines are usually orange in color, and that orange is coming from the pigment of the terracotta is where that's coming from. So anyways, the wine we're drinking right now, like I said, it's the Castello Monacchi is the producer. The name of the wine is the Poluna, and this is the Primitivo that we talked about a little bit earlier. Remember, Primitivo was the triple drag from Croatia. It is what we drink here in the States from California, known as Zinfandel. This is 100% Primitivo. And like I said, it is coming from Puglia, specifically from near the town of Lecce. And the aging here, they only do it for about 6 months. 6 months, half of it in steel, 6 months of it in French barriques. So barriques would be your smaller wine barrels, usually around 225 liters is what most barriques are. Some might be 250, but most are around 220, 225. So they'll do 6 months with half of the liquid in French barrique, half of it in steel. Then they blend it all together and they put it in the bottle. And then they age it in the bottle probably for another 4 months or 6 months before they will release it onto the market. So very, very, very little wood here. Now, if you guys want to see what you're getting here on the nose. What's the vintage on this one, Laura? This is the 2018 vintage. So this is a relatively newer wine. This wine here is really just over, technically it's 2 years old because the harvest would have been, August of 2018. So by this point, the wine would have been would have been aging in its wood right about now, 2 years ago. So it's just about 2 years old. It's still on the young side. So I'm definitely getting some pepper here. Getting some vanilla. Let's see, what else? I'm getting a little bit of an underbrush, that foresty, underbrushy smell. There's definitely some ripe red fruits here, maybe like a cherry preserve or something like that, or maybe some blueberries but I'm also getting a spice note, like how about like a Chinese 5-spice? Like, that combo, that typical, like used for almost all Chinese cooking, all Vietnamese cooking. It's like a mix of like Sichuan pepper and clove and star anise and clove, and that kind of like just that ground allspice that they use. Looks like someone has a Poluna 2019. You guys have, so it looks like we got a mixed shipment of 2018 and 2019. So yours, if whoever has the 2019, yours will be a slightly different notes, but should have a lot of similar concepts to it. Someone says they get a strawberry, a smell of their not strawberry shortcake, but their strawberry shortcake doll they had when they were 8 years old. So that's an interesting one. I've never heard strawberry shortcake doll before, so I like that one. That's definitely unique. Let's see how this tastes. So we're getting some puckering here. That's the beautiful acidity. That's what you need for Thanksgiving days. Lots of beautiful acidity. You're getting some tannins. There's a little bit of the dryness there. I'm only getting it on the tongue. A lot of times you can get the dryness up under your lips, your cheeks. Now that dryness is coming down to my lip area, but it's very, very, very mild. Like I said, you don't want a whole lot of tannins. You want anything very big, very tannic like that for Thanksgiving. There's definitely a fruitiness on the palate. Overall, I'm actually even getting a red grape note on the nose, getting a little bit of that red grape note on the palate. And let's not forget that wine does come from grapes. So smelling grapes sometimes on the nose or even getting them on the palate, it's a good thing, not a bad thing. Now, you need to be careful with Primitivo and Thanksgiving, because this one's coming in at 14% ABV. In Puglia, this is low in alcohol from a Primitivo. A lot of Pugliese Primitivos can easily hit 16, 17% naturally. I'm not talking about a fortified wine or anything like that. Naturally hit 16, 17%. I've even seen 18 and 19. Okay, unfortified. So yeah, one glass of that and you're done for the night. So try to look for a lower alcohol Primitivo if you're getting a Primitivo from Italy. If you're getting a California Zin, most of them are usually pretty decent, you know, usually in the 13, 14-ish or 14.5, somewhere in that range. But yeah, try not to go any higher than 14 something. Keep it below 15. You don't want too much alcohol when it comes to, well, maybe you need the alcohol to deal with your relatives. I don't know. But you don't want too much alcohol in the sense of the pairing concept with Thanksgiving, with the Thanksgiving food is what I'm getting at. Someone asked, does Primitivo age well? It ages okay. A few years. This is not a wine that you're going to be able to age for 15, 20, 30, 40 years, nothing like that. But some, not this one, but some higher end Primitivos with a little extra alcohol in them, you can get 10 years out of them. You can possibly even get 15 years out of them. But I would try to drink them a little bit sooner, keep them definitely under 10. I would say no more than 5 or 6 or 8, depending on which wine you're drinking, of course. Another question that's been asked is as far as letting wines breathe, and someone saying that they are seeing the benefit of the breathing in the white wines, and that the white wines have opened up more. And they're asking, is it the breathing or is it the warming up? And that's a good question. That's, you know, you have two variables there. You have two factors. You know, you have the fact that the wine's opening up, and you have the fact that the temperature is increasing. As the temperature increases in a wine, it will open up the olfactory compounds more. You get too warm in a red wine, and you start getting off-putting compounds coming out, and that nose, that bouquet is can be very, very off-putting if it gets too warm. Same thing if the white gets way too warm as well. So yeah, it's going to be a little bit of both. Obviously, if the white wine's way too cold, you're not going to smell almost anything on the nose, because it's all very closed, and you don't get much of the compounds coming out for you to smell. So you're looking at the right temperature across the board, but at the same time, you are experiencing that wine opening up in itself, because it's getting exposed to oxygen, and it will change. Some wines will change very rapidly, and you'll very easily notice the difference from your first sip to another sip 30 or 45 minutes later, whereas some wines you won't notice the opening up at all. So it really all depends on the grape, depends on the wine. It's not like you can say it's just reds or just whites. It really all depends on the denomination and the grape as well. So what I'm going to do now is, we've discussed the 4 wines. I want to finish up talking a little bit about, because I know we're almost hitting our hour mark. So I want to finish giving you guys some pointers and some things to think about when it comes to wines for Thanksgiving. And then I'll open it up to to questions. So like I said, we talked about the classic methods and how they're great for almost any course, whether it be Thanksgiving or not. With white wines, we talked about how the great acidity cuts through fat in the gravy, and the stuffing, the potatoes, the yams. It pairs well with all those things. You want that beautiful acidity. You want maybe a sweet note possibly, so it can go up against the saltiness, against sweetness of different dishes. When it comes to the red wines, Pinot Noir, for example, is great for ham. The high acidity in Pinot Noir cuts through the richness of the flavor. Pinot Noir a lot of times has a very earthy undertone note to it, mixed with fruitiness. And so that goes well with, once again, that turkey and the stuffing. It can handle the tang of cranberry sauce, for example. The red berry characteristics of Pinot Noir and mimics the cranberry relish. And pairs well with fragrant spices, light side dishes, sweet potatoes, etc. Primitivo that we're drinking, slightly fuller bodied than a Pinot Noir. It adds more intensity, but still it has a balancing effect with many typical Thanksgiving dishes, and especially with, once again, your herb-filled stuffing. One of the things we did not get to do this evening, unfortunately, due to the mix-up by the distributor, is the dessert wine. And I really wish we could have had that dessert wine, because that wine would have been perfect for like a pecan pie or a pumpkin pie. It would have been absolutely phenomenal. You would have blown your minds. You have the sweetness of that dessert wine, the higher viscosity of the wine itself, that rich oiliness in your mouth. It helps to support the very rich and robust, spice of pumpkin pie, as well as, your caramelized flavors that you find in a pecan pie. And if I could leave you with 4 key points, okay, 4 key points when looking for wines for Thanksgiving, it's these. 1, you always look for great acidity in whites. That's the most important. Okay, great acidity in whites, absolute most important thing. Okay, number 2, look for mild tannins in red, as little to no wood. You don't want to see any wood with your reds. You want very mild tannins. And let me tell you, if you have any asparagus at Thanksgiving, you without a doubt do not want any wood at all. And this goes year round. If you ever have asparagus with your meals, stay away from wood. Wines that are aged in wood have a compound in them that negatively react with a compound in asparagus, and it produces very metallic taste in your mouth, and it's very off-putting. It's disgusting. And just stay away from asparagus, So number 3, you steer clear of higher alcohol wines. Reason being, especially if you have sweet potatoes. If you have sweet potatoes that have any sort of brown sugar in them or anything like that, it will make it taste very off balanced, and it will not pair very well at all. And the 4th key point is fruitiness and sweetness. Okay, you want to have those in your wines. You want a fruitiness to your wines. You want a sweetness to your wines. This will help to balance all the saltiness that you're going to find in most of your dishes of Thanksgiving, and will very well complement any of your sweet dishes. So those are your 4 key points: acidity, good acidity, mild tannins, lower alcohol, and a fruity or sweetiness to the wines. Okay? So I'll open up to any other questions. One of the questions is, what was the name of the dessert wine we were supposed to have? So it's identical to what I'm going to type it in here right now. Rio Favara is the name of the producer. The denomination is the Moscato di Noto. Moscato di Noto. And see, that's what I just, I'm sorry, I did this privately. Hold on. Let me put that back in there for everyone to see. Okay. So Rio Fava de Moscato di Noto is the name of the wine we just had. It's also the name of the wine you'll be looking for the sweet wine. The difference is you had Nizzica tonight, whereas you want Notissimo. Notissimo is their dessert version of this. If you can't find something like that, there's a lot of other great dessert wines. I would stay away from a Vinsanto. I would stick with any sort of dried grape style white wines from Northern Italy. There's a lot of dessert wines like that in Northern Italy. Any wine that says Passito on it, you're going to see it written like this. Oh, I want private again. Hold on, let me put that back to everyone. Called Passito. Passito is a very typical on Italian label for your dried dessert wines. Just look for a white one though. You don't want a red dessert wine for Thanksgiving, because your red dessert wines is what you're going to pair with like chocolate cakes and chocolate mousse and anything chocolatey or dark or anything like that. Whereas you're talking about usually pecan pies, you're talking about pumpkin pies, you're talking about things like that. So you want to go with a white dessert wine instead. Let's see what other questions I have coming in here. Where can you buy these? Some different local produce shops here will carry some of these. There might be a bottle or two left at the club, so you might be able to find a bottle or two left at the club. They're not. We didn't get many in for the tasting, unfortunately. But there might be a bottle or two left. Other than that, my absolute favorite place to get wines like this, like I've said, is would be the Italian Market over on Defense Highway. They have the absolute best selection of Italian wines I have seen pretty much on the entire East Coast. And if they don't have these specific ones, the wine manager, his name is Nat, N-A-T. He can really help you find something almost identical or very similar, or can help you out that way. What else we have these? Got that one already. Yep, Italian Market. Okay. What am I serving on Thursday? That's a really good question. I haven't even thought about that yet myself. Probably a sparkling wine for my Thursday meal, for the majority of the meal, and then a dessert wine for the dessert part of it, but I haven't decided on that yet. I probably won't be until Wednesday. I'll go through my collection. You can see part of my collection there is my wine fridge. I have another one behind on the other side of me as well. So I have to look through them first and decide what I'm going to be going with. Let's see, another question. Okay. Oh my God, what is my favorite wine in the fridge behind me? I have a lot of Brunello in my fridge. Brunello is one of my absolute favorite wines. It is a big red wine, aged for about 5 years, from Tuscany. Lots of tannins, lots of power behind it. Good amount of alcohol. Never drink it on Thanksgiving. They can ease. They're aged for 5 years before they're even released to the market, and I wouldn't drink one under 10, 15 years of age. Things of absolute beauty, a Brunello. So, what's my wine for a Tuesday? You mean is it like a regular Tuesday, just some random Tuesday, or like, one of my absolute go-to, just a random day of the week wine. One of my absolute favorite wines that I drink a lot of, and you can find it almost anywhere in this area. The producer is Sartrelli, and I just put it right there in your. I keep accidentally putting it private instead of to everyone. Okay, so it's now out going to everyone. Sartrelli Classico. I can tell you that Italian Market has it. I can tell you that Bay Ridge has it. I want to see. I think I saw it at Eastport Liquors. I think they have it. I want to say Bin, whatever it is, there next to Whole Foods. I always get the numbers mixed up because there's the one in Baltimore and then there's Bin 909. It's Bin 201, I think. Whatever it is. I believe they have it as well. Almost everyone around here carries Sartrelli Classico. Sartrelli's from the East Coast, from the Marche region of Italy. It's a Verdicchio is the name of the grape. The denomination is Verdicchio di Castello di Jesi. They're probably the top producer of Verdicchio in all of Italy. The Classico is the most commonly found in this area. I think it retails for about $16 to $18, depending on which store you get it at in the area. So very inexpensive. Now, if you can find it, only a handful of stores in the area carry it. I just typed it into chat. Look for their Cerlivio. That's their higher, a little bit higher end. It's not their flagship wine, but it's their higher end Verdicchio. It's a cru, so it's coming from their Cerlivio portion of their vineyards. And that would be somewhere in the 20s for a bottle. It'll just blow your mind, the Cerlivio. So that's for a nicer weekend, whereas the Classico is your just a regular wine for the middle of the week. A good red one for the middle of the week here is the, at Bay Ridge. They usually carry wines by a producer called Golfi from Sicily. And the wine they usually carry there is Nero Yableo. And that looks funny in your, like I misspelled it, but I didn't. I'm like 99% positive I spelled that right. It's got a very strange Sicilian spelling to it. Sicilian's really not Italian. It's like saying someone from Texas, they're not American, they're Texan, and then they're American. Okay. So you're Sicilian and then you're Italian. And so, yeah, they speak very differently down there. So the Nero Gabaleo by Golfi is one of my favorites. I know Bay Ridge has that one. And I can't think of what else off the top of my head I usually go is my go-tos when I usually hit Bay Ridge or something like that. But yeah, there's some really good ones out there. Hopefully we'll do some future tastings. I've been in talks with Toby, the general manager, about setting up maybe something similar to this, but focused on a specific region of Italy. And we'll have the chefs of the yacht club produce like a 4-course dinner. And then we'll have each course paired with a different wine, and it'll be all about one specific region. So all the food will be typical foods of that region, typical wines of that region. And then we'll discuss not just the food, we'll discuss the wine, we'll discuss the culture, the history about that one specific region. So yeah, if you're into that, let Toby know, let Dan know. And at that point, I think it's time for me to turn it over to Dan because I don't see there's being any other questions. And Dan, are you there?
Yes, absolutely. Tony, thank you. Thank you so much. I've received so many great comments in the chat just saying how much people enjoyed this. I enjoyed listening and learning some things tonight. So I just wanted to say thank you for that.
Cheers.